Chapter 14 of A Prefect's Uncle. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. A Prefect's Uncle by W.G. Wodehouse. Chapter 14. Norris Takes a Short Holiday. "It's all rot," observed Pringle, "to say that they haven't a chance, because they have." He and Lorimer were passing through the cricket field on their way back from an early morning visit to the Baths, and had stopped to look at Leicester's house team, revised version, taking its daily hour of fielding practice. They watched the performance keenly and critically, as spies in an enemy camp. "Who said they hadn't a chance?" said Lorimer. "I didn't." "Oh, everybody. The chaps call them the kindergarten and the Kids' Happy League, and things of that sort. Rot, I call it. They seem to forget that you only want 2 or 3 really good men in a team if the rest can field. Look at our crowd. They've all either got their colors or else are just outside the teams, and I swear you can't rely on one of them to hold the merest sitter right into his hands." On the subject of fielding in general and catching in particular, Pringle was feeling rather sore. In the match which his house had just won against Browning's, he had put himself on to bowl in the second innings. He was one of those bowlers who managed to capture from 6 to 10 wickets in the course of a season, and the occasions on which he bowled really well were few. On this occasion he had bowled excellently, and it had annoyed him when 5 catches, 5 soft, gentle catches, were missed off him in the course of 4 overs. As he watched the crisp, clean fielding, which was shown by the very smallest of Leicester's small tail, he felt that he would rather have any of that despised 8 on his side than any of the schoolhouse lights, except Baines and Lorimer. "Our lot's all right, really," said Lorimer, in answer to Pringle's sweeping condemnation. "Everybody has his off days. They'll be all right next match." "Doubt it," replied Pringle. "It's all very well for you. You bowl to hit the sticks. I don't. Now, just watch these kids for a moment. Now, look. No, he couldn't have got to that. Wait a second. Now." Gethryn had skied one up into the deep. Wilson, Burgess, and Carstairs all started for it. "Burgess," said the bishop. The other 2 stopped dead. Burgess ran on and made the catch. "Now, there you are," said Pringle, pointing his moral. "See how those 2 kids stopped when Gethryn called. If that had happened in one of our matches, you'd have had a dozen men rotting about underneath the ball and getting in one another's way, and then probably winding up by everybody leaving the catch to everybody else." "Oh, come on," said Lorimer. "You're getting morbid. Why the dickens didn't you think of having our fellows out for fielding practice, if you're so keen on it?" "They wouldn't have come. When a chap gets colours, he seems to think he's bought the place. You can't drag a second 11 man out of his bed before breakfast to improve his fielding. He thinks it can't be improved. They're a heartbreaking crew." "Good," said Lorimer. "I suppose that includes me." "No, you're a model man. I have seen you hold a catch now and then." "Thanks. Oh, I say, I gave in the poem yesterday. I hope the deuce it won't get the prize. I hope they won't spot, either, that I didn't write the thing." "Not a chance," said Pringle complacently. "You're all right. Don't you worry yourself." Webster's, against whom Leicester's had been drawn in the opening round of the house matches, had 3 men in their team, and only 3 who knew how to hold a bat. It was the slackest house in the school, and always had been. It did not cause any overwhelming surprise, accordingly, when Leicester's beat them without fatigue by an innings and 121 runs. Webster's won the toss and made 35. For Leicester's, Rees and Gethryn scored 50 and 62 respectively, and Marryat 53 not out. They then, with 2 wickets down, declared and rattled Webster's out for 70. The public, which had its eye on the team in order to see how its tail was likely to shape, was disappointed. The only definite fact that could be gleaned from the match was that the junior members of the team were not to be despised in the field. The early morning field-outs had had their effect. Adams especially shone, while Wilson at cover and Burgess in the deep recalled Jessup and Tidlesley. The school made a note of the fact. So did the bishop. He summoned the 8 juniors seriatim to his study and administered much praise, coupled with the news that fielding before breakfast would go on as usual. Leicester had drawn against Jephson's in the second round. Norris's lot had beaten Cook's by, curiously enough, almost exactly the same margin as that by which Leicester had defeated Webster's. It was generally considered that this match would decide Leicester's chances for the cup. If they could beat a really hot team like Jephson's, it was reasonable to suppose that they would do the same to the rest of the houses, though the schoolhouse would have to be reckoned with. But the schoolhouse, as Pringle had observed, was weak in the field. It was not a coherent team. Individually, its members were good, but they did not play together as Leicester's did. But the majority of the school did not think seriously of their chances, except for Pringle, who, as has been mentioned before, always made a point of thinking differently from everyone else. No one really believed that they would win the cup, or even appear in the final. How could a team whose tale began at the fall of the second wicket defeat teams which, like the schoolhouse, had no real tale at all? Norris supported this view. It was for this reason that when at breakfast on the day on which Jephson's were due to play Leicester, he received an invitation from one of his many uncles to spend a week-end at his house. He decided to accept it. This uncle was a man of wealth. After winning 2 fortunes on the Stock Exchange and losing them both, he had at length amassed a third, with which he retired in triumph to the country, leaving Throgmorton Street to exist as best it could without him. He had bought a show place at a village which lay 20 miles by rail to the east of Beckford, and it had always been Norris's wish to see this show place, a house which was said to combine the hoariest of antiquity with a variety of modern comforts. Merely to pay a flying visit there would be good, but his uncle held out an additional attraction. If Norris could catch the 1:40 from Horton, he would arrive just in time to take part in a cricket match, that day being the day of the annual encounter with the neighbouring village of Pudford. The rector of Pudford, the opposition captain, so wrote Norris's uncle, had by underhand means lured down 3 really decent players from Oxford, not blues, but almost, who had come to the village ostensibly to read classics with him as their coach, but in reality for the sole purpose of snatching from little Bindlebury, his own village, the laurels that they had so nobly earned the year before. He had heard that Norris was captaining the Beckford team this year, and had an average of 38.032, so would he come and make 38.032 for little Bindlebury? This, thought Norris, is fame. This is where I spread myself. I must be in this at any price. He showed the letter to Baker. What a pity, said Baker. What's a pity? That you won't be able to go. It seems rather a catch. Can't go, said Norris. My dear sir, you're talking through your hat. Think I'm going to refuse an invitation like this? Not if I know it. I'm going to toddle off to Jephson, get an exeat, and catch the 1:40, and if I don't paralyze the Pudford bowling, I'll shoot myself. But the house match, Leicester's, this afternoon, gurgled the amazed Baker. Oh, hang Leicester. Surely the rest of you can lick the Kids' Happy League without my help. If you can't, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. I've chosen you a wicket with my own hands, fit to play a test match on. Of course we ought to lick them, but you can never tell at cricket what's going to happen. We oughtn't to run any risks when we got such a good chance of winning the pot. Why, it's centuries since we won the pot. Don't you go. I must, man. It's the chance of a lifetime. Baker tried another method of attack. Besides, he said, you don't suppose Jephson will let you off to play in a beastly little village game when there's a house match on. You must never know, hissed Norris, after the manner of the Surreyside villain. He's certain to ask why you want to get off so early. I shall tell him my uncle particularly wishes me to come early. Suppose he asks why? I shall say I can't possibly imagine. Oh, well, if you're going to tell lies. Not at all. Merely a diplomatic evasion. I'm not bound to go and sob out my secrets on Jephson's waistcoat." Baker gave up the struggle with a sniff. Morris went to Mr. Jephson and got leave to spend the week-end at his uncle's. The interview went without a hitch, as Norris had prophesied. "You will miss the house match, Norris, then?" said Mr. Jephson. "I'm afraid so, sir, but Mr. Leicester's are very weak." "Rees, Marriott, Gethryn are a good beginning." "Yes, sir, but they've got nobody else. Their tail starts after those three." "Very well, but it seems a pity." "Thank you, sir," said Norris, wisely refraining from discussing the matter. He got his exeat, which was what he had come for. In the annals of Pudford and Little Bindlebury cricket there had never been such a match as that year's. The rector of Pudford and his 3 Oxford experts performed prodigies with the bat. Prodigies, that is to say, judged from the standpoint of ordinary Pudford scoring, where double figures were the exception rather than the rule. The rector, an elderly, benevolent-looking gentleman, played with astounding caution and still more remarkable luck for 17. Finally, after he had been in an hour and 10 minutes, mid-on accepted the 8th easy chance offered to him, and the ecclesiastic had to retire. The 3 varsity men knocked up 100 between them, and the complete total was no less than 134. Then came the sensation of the day. After 3 wickets had fallen for 10 runs, Norris and the Little Bindlebury curate and old Cantab stayed together and knocked off the deficit. Norris's contribution of 78 not out was for many a day the sole topic of conversation over the evening pewter at the Little Bindlebury Arms. A non-enthusiast, who tried on one occasion to introduce the topic of Farmer Giles' grey pig, found himself the most unpopular man in the village. On the Monday morning Norris returned to Jephson's with pride in his heart and a sovereign in his pocket, the latter the gift of his excellent uncle. He had, he freely admitted to himself, a good time. His uncle had done him well, exceedingly well, and he looked forward to going to the show place again in the near future. In the meantime he felt a languid desire to know how the house match was going on. They must almost have finished the first innings, he thought, unless Jephson's had run up a very big score and kept their opponents in the field all the afternoon. "Hello, Baker," he said, tramping breezily into the study. "I've had the time of my lifetime. Great, simply. No other word for it. How's the match getting on?" Baker looked up from the book he was reading. "What match?" he inquired coldly. "House match, of course, you lunatic. What match do you think I meant? How's it going on?" "It's not going on," said Baker. "It's stopped." "You needn't be a funny goat," said Norris complainingly. "You know what I mean. What happened on Saturday?" "They won the toss," began Baker slowly. "Yes." "And went in and made 120. "Good. I told you they were no use. 120's rotten." "Then we went in and made 21. 121. "No, just a simple 21, without any trimmings of any sort." "But, man, how? Why? How on earth did it happen?" "Gethryn took 8 for 9. Does that seem to make it any clearer?" 8 for 9? Rot. Show you the score sheet if you care to see it. And the second innings. Oh, you began a second innings? Yes, we also finished it. We scored rather freely in the second innings. 10 was on the board before the 5th wicket fell. In the end we fairly collared the bowling and ran up a total of 48. Norris took a seat and tried to grapple with the situation. 48? Look here, Baker, swear you're not ragging. Baker took a green scoring sheet from the shelf and passed it to him. "Look for yourself," he said. Norris looked. He looked long and earnestly. Then he handed the book back. "Then they won," he said blankly. "How do you guess these things?" observed Baker with some bitterness. "Well, you are a crew," said Norris. "Getting out for 21 and 48. I see Gethryn got 9 for 30 in the second innings. He seems to have been on the spot. I suppose the wicket suited him." "If you can call it a wicket. Next time you specially select a pitch for the house to play on, I wish you'd hunt up something with some slight pretensions to decency." "Why, what was wrong with the pitch? It was a bit worn, that was all." "If," said Baker, "you call having holes 3 inch deep just where every ball pitches being a bit worn, I suppose it was. Anyhow, it would have been almost as well, don't you think, if you'd stopped and played for the house instead of going off to your rotten village match? You were sick enough when Gethryn went off to the M.C.C. match." "Oh, curse," said Norris, for he had been hoping against hope that the parallel nature of the two incidents would be less apparent to other people than it was to himself. And so it came about that Leicesters passed successfully the first 2 rounds and soared into the dizzy heights of the semi-final. End of chapter 14. Norris takes a short holiday.